we don't need to talk. I know we are behind the schedule. So without talking, let's directly go to the tutorial. However, two things is very important, so I have to tell you. One, if you just find this video, make sure you skip this, go to playlist and follow other videos and then come to this video, because this is a continuation video. You won't understand this if you did not follow last videos. Second, if you're not subscribed yet, you must go and subscribe right now. Click on the subscribe button. Not only subscribe button, just click on this bell icon, so you will get notified whenever I upload something. There are so many good things to come. Okay, so last video what we have done is we created auth server and also we secured a resource server using our auth server or else authorization server. So now we know how we can create auth server and how we can get a token from that and how we can configure our resource server to access the auth server, right? So that setup is complete. So now we have a separate profile service, we have authorization server. We cannot access profile service without a token, right? So what the profile service does is when we send with the token, if you don't send the token, it just say access denied, unauthorized. If you send the token, it will pass the token to authorization server and verify the token. If the token is valid, it let you in. So that was what we covered in video number 10. So this is 11th video. So this is one more step ahead. So what we are going to do here, so right now any user can do anything in our server, in our system, right? Any user, if you have a token, you can do anything with the profile service. But what we are going to do is we are going to restrict access to the profile service based on the roles, right? So we have two users, one is a Krish, other one is Suranga, right? So I have created, I'm going to show you, I have created a third user, right? So those users has different roles. We are going to restrict users to functionalities based on their roles. In other words, how we can do role-based permission on microservice with Spring Security. Okay, let's move in here. So I have opened all the projects in the same window, so it would be easy for you, right? But if you're confusing, I'm sorry. Just let me know, so then next time I can do separate windows. So if you get the changes, this is not significant. This is not something you must do, right? So I have here, I have added this generated value. I have added a strategy as an identity. So what that does is, so now it can do the auto increment feature in the MySQL. It can use it, but before that we use a sequence table, right? So that's it about the comments, right? On the authorization server, I did one change. If you go here, you will see, so we have a data file, right? So in this data file, you can see I have created one more user called Nuan. I use the same password which Suranga has, right? I create a new user called Nuan, and also I added a new permission called role editor. I added a new role called editor, right? So that editor will has update permission, right? So these are the passwords. So that's it for the authorization server. So let's try to integrate this with our profile service. So right now in the profile service, we have in a controller. If you directly go to the controller, so you will see here, so we have three different endpoints, right? So you have a profile post, and you have a get with an ID, and also you can get all the profiles. So what I'm going to do is, if the user has a create role, if user has a profile create, then I'm letting that user to create this. But if user don't have it, then user cannot do that. So let's see how we can do it. The first thing first, we need to enable, we need to come here, we need to enable global method permission, right? Global method security, enable global method security. What this does is, this will enable us to use the method level security, right? So we need to add one more property here, pre-post enable true, right? So we need to set the pre-post enable true. So now what I can do is, I can go directly to the controller. I'm going to restrict the profile, right? I'm going to restrict the profile based on the user's permission. Let's see what we can do here. If you go to the data, user has we have created a role called create profile. If the user has a create profile only, he will allow to create a new record in the system, right? So let's try to do this. Previously we have added global method level security. So now we need to come here. So this is the method, this is the post method. So you can see here it says request method is post. So this is the method we are going to use to create new record in the system, right? So I'm going to tell if the user has create profile permission, then only we allow to user to create the new record. Otherwise it will say you are not allowed to do this. So how we can do this? We can say pre-authorized, right? So we need to have a pre-authorized user. So has you can say any authority if you have more than one authority to you to do this. If you want to do based on the roles, right? So remember, roles and authorization authority as a two different, right? So if you go back here, if you need to recap it, so roles are create, you have here role admin, editor and the operator, right? So one role has many permissions, right? So we have role to permission mapping file, right? So here, so you can set the permission either based on the permission, you can set the access level either based on the permission or either based on the roles, right? So because if you have a like for example, let's say you have one role, that role has a 5 permission, right? So if you need to give a particular method based on the role, you can do that, right? But if you want to go further restriction, if you want to tell no, even the user has this role, if user has only this permission, then he's on need to do this, then you can go with a permission base, right? So that's what I'm going to do right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say has authority, right? Has authority. So what is the authority I'm going to consider here? Has authority. What is the authority I'm going to consider here is create profile, right? So if the user has create profile authority, then he's allowed to do this, right? Right. So I think I missed the quotes here. This has to go like this and this and this and this. Okay, so now I think we are good to go, right? So we are good to go. So now we'll see how this works, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this auth server first, right? So I'm going to run the authorization server, and then I'm going to get a token from a user who don't have access to this create profile and see what's going to happen, right? So let's do this, and that is running properly. So let's run the profile service and let's go to our insomnia and let's get a token, right? So here the token come from the Suranga, which don't have a create profile access, right? Okay, so we got a token. Okay, so now if you want, you can check the token from here, right? So we have done all those things, so I'm not going to go through this again. So you can see here he has update profile, role editor and the read profile permission, but he do not have permission to create a profile, right? So let's try to fetch all profiles. Let's add this token here, right? So now so far we have 1 2 3 4 profiles. So let's try to create a 5th one, right? So save, and let's going to create a record, right? So let's say Saman, right? So Pereira. Okay, so let's give some random numbers and let's replace the header from the header we copied. Okay, so let's try this. So now it says access denied, you are not authorized to do this. Why? Because you don't have a create profile role. So let's get someone who has create profile role, right? So let's take a token from let's say I'm going to use the Krish, and kpass is the password, right? So I got a new token. So let's validate this token to make sure it has create profile. Okay, so it has create profile. So now what we can do is we can use this one, right? Again, you can see when the fetch only 4 records are there, right? So you can use this token and see whether it's allowed to do it, right? So now let's try this. Okay, it created new record, so that means it's working. So now we know we can control any method from the permission user has, right? So if you go back here, let me to change this to SQL syntax, so extension, so you can read this easily. So if you see this, so here what we have done is we have insert client, and then we have a permissions, right? So we have 4 permissions here: create profile, create read profile, update profile, delete profile, right? So understand this very carefully, because this is going to explain the fundamentals of this role based permission setup, right? So now we have 4 permissions here, and also we have 3 roles here, right? Role admin, editor, and operator. So then we have permission to role mapping, right? So you can see 1 is a create, 2 is a read, and 3 is update, 4 is delete, right? So permission ID, and the role ID goes as a 1, 2, 3. Right. So if you take that 1 1 2 1 3 1 4 1, right? So permission ID to role ID, right? So that means admin has all those create, read, update, delete access, right? So and then so editor has read access as well as update access, right? And operator only has read access, right? So now we have 3 users created, and here we mark 1 Krish as an admin, and Suranga as an editor, and Nuan as an operator, right? So now we'll see how this works, because I'm going to explain you how this when to use a role and when to use a permission. So now if you see here what we have done so far, so we got create profile permission, right? So if you come here, the create profile permission is the first one, right? So it only has to admin, right? So now, but if you get something like a read, right? So if you get the read has to operator, and also read has by editor, and also read has by admin, right? So read permission has all those 3 people, all those 3 roles has the read permission. If you give this as a read permission, so let's do that, right? So let's do something like this. So I'm going to copy this, right? I'm going to alter the method which is get profiles, which is we are getting all the profiles, right? So I'm going to change this to read profile permission, right? So what I'm telling here, if anyone has read permission, in our case all 3 users has read permission, let that user to fetch all profiles, right? So let's restart this, and anyway let's generate a token, right? So now this time let's generate a token from the first token is come from the Krish. Okay, so let's copy the token, right? And you can do directly here and go here and fetch, right? So now it's allowed to fetch. So now let's get the token from let's say Suranga, right? Sparse. Okay, so let's get the new token. Let's change different one that start with from E. So let's go back here and change the token. Okay, so now it's allowed to fetch. So let's do one more thing. Go to auth token and go from 1 and Okay, so now that's the token. It start from C and come here and change here, and it should work, right? So now you see, since this read permission available for all the users we have, right? So we, in our case, read permission is available for all three roles actually, right? Not the users. We set the permission to role, right? So we read profile permission available for all three roles. So that means all three users can access. So now this time we set the permission from the our permission from the permission level. In other words, authority level. So let's try to set by role level. Okay. So now you know there is a role called operator. Right, so right now, no1 is assigned to operator, the third one. So no1 is assigned to operator. So now what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to set the permission based on the authority. Instead of that, I'm going to say has role, right? So if you have multiple, you can say any, right? So I'm going to set the permission based on the role, operator role, right? So now I'm going to restart this. Okay. So now we have operator role. So only the no1 user no1 is assigned to operator role. So technically no1 should be able to fetch this now, right? Okay. So let's try this. Okay. So no1's tokens is allowed to fetch. So I'm going to get a token from an admin user, right, which is Krish, right? So okay, pass. I'm going to get a token from an admin user. Okay, so let's get this token, and now let's paste this token here. Oh, it's access denied. You got it, or you confused? I understand it a little bit confusing. Okay, so let's talk about it a little bit. So in our case, we have a user, right? And also we have roles. We have an admin, operator, and as well as an editor. Role has permission. Keep in mind, role has permission. User don't have a permission. Role has permission, right? So admin has a create, update, delete all permission, and editor only has a update permission and the read permission, and operator only has a read permission, right? So now we can set access level based on two factors. One, either based on the role or either directly based on the permission. Let's say we need to let, for example, what we have done is we let create or the post request we allowed only to user who has a create profile permission, right? So now if you did the reverse engineering here, so if you go to the database, if it will check who has create profile permission. So create profile permission is assigned to only to the people who has an admin role. So now who has an admin role? Only Krish user has admin role, right? So in the second example, what we have done is we did read profile. So that case, it allowed to Krish, Suranga, no1, all three users to do that. Why? Because read permission is assigned to all three roles. So now we change it to the role base. I mean, we configure that to say has role operator. In that case, admin was blocked. Why? Because we don't say which permission, we say which role, right? Anyway, user has a role. So now what it does is it go and check, hey, what is the role disallowed? It's operator role. Who's assigned to the operator role? Only no1 is assigned, right? So Krish is not assigned, so that's why Krish was blocked. Though Krish is the admin, Krish was blocked, right? So that is how this user, role, and the permission works. So you can argue like, okay, operator is a different role, but usually role doesn't go in a hierarchy, right? That's a difference between a role and the usual business case, right? So if you get the business case, you may have a CEO, directors, executives, managers, operators, clerks, like that. But the role doesn't go like that, because admin role may have a user who only doing the admin. He may don't do any business business side operations, right? So but the business side operation may have a business consultant, business executive, business operator, or user, or something like that, right? So now I'm going to push this code to GitHub as usual under video 11, right? So you can get this code and you can play with it. I'm not going to take much time because I know now it's the ground is clear, right? So you can use multiple roles. In that case, you can say has any role. Now here use the has role. We can say has any role or has any authority, right? So as a conclusion, we can do two things. Either we can set the permission based on the permission or as authorities, right, which like create, read, update, delete, or else we can set the permission based on a role, right? But if you base on the role, user must have a role. Though user do have that permission, it doesn't work, right? In like if you get the nutshell, this is like almost it's like a permission. So you can either depend only on the permission or either only on the roles, or using them both in a mixed mode, right? So next video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as with a web application, right? So right now we just create services and we just sending the request through Postman, right? But the real case, you don't send the request through the Postman, right? So you would use the web-based web application, right? So in the next video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a web application to coordinate this through the authorization server and maybe probably role-based permission as well. Okay, so see you soon. Till that, take care.